At 79 years old, Hayley Mills has finally shared the truth that stayed quiet for decades. The lessons she learned from Maureen O'Hara were not just about acting, but about becoming herself. Some memories remain vivid for a lifetime, not because of what was said, but because of who we were becoming when we heard them. Hayley Mills, now 79 years old, often thinks back to certain moments in her early life and career. She has lived many decades, worked in films, traveled the world, loved deeply, and faced many changes, but some memories still feel close, as if they just happened yesterday. When she talks about her past now, her voice is calm and thoughtful. She is not trying to create drama or surprise anyone. Instead, she speaks like someone who has lived enough to understand what truly matters. She remembers herself as a young girl, unsure of who she was, standing on film sets surrounded by adults who seemed so confident. Fame came early to her, before she had even figured out her own identity. People everywhere recognized her face, her smile, her voice, and her roles. Yet only she knew how confusing that could feel. Growing up while the world watched meant she did not always have space to make mistakes quietly or learn slowly. She had to learn in front of everyone. Now, at 79, Hayley sees her life as a journey where every person she met left some influence. Some people passed through quickly. Others shaped her in ways she did not fully understand at the time. Among those who shaped her the most was Maureen O'Hara, her co-star in The Parent Trap. Hayley remembers being only a teenager then, still learning how to stand with confidence, still unsure of her place in the world. Maureen was older, experienced, and strong. She carried herself with certainty. Hayley, being so young, watched everything, listened, and absorbed more than she realized. Looking back, she understands that her younger self was searching for guidance not in a loud or desperate way, but quietly, through observation and feeling. She was learning what it meant to be herself. And sometimes, the lessons that stay with us the longest are the ones that come in simple moments, shared quietly, without anyone else noticing. But to understand what Maureen O'Hara meant to her, we must first understand the world Hayley came from. Some children dream of fame. Hayley was born into it. She came into the world on the 18th of April 1946, in London, as part of a family already deeply connected to theatre and film. Her father, Sir John Mills, was one of Britain's respected actors. He was known for playing roles that showed strong emotion and quiet strength. Audiences admired him for his honesty on screen and for the way he made characters feel real. Her mother, Mary Hayley Bell, was also a creative person. She wrote plays and novels, and she was someone who understood how stories could touch people's hearts. So, from the very beginning, Hayley was surrounded by stories, characters, and the world of performance. Their home was not glamorous in the way people imagine celebrity homes. It was warm, busy, and full of things related to acting. There were always scripts lying on tables, rehearsals happening in rooms, and discussions about characters, dialogue, and scenes. Hayley grew up seeing how much work went into every performance. She saw that acting was not only about being on screen, but also about discipline, practice, and patience. Her parents worked hard, and even though they were talented, they never treated acting as something easy or guaranteed. This helped Hayley learn early that skill comes from effort and consistency. She watched her parents study their roles carefully. She would see her father reading his lines again and again, not just memorizing them, but thinking about how the character would feel and move. Her mother would write, revise, and rethink her work, showing that creativity takes time and reflection. No one sat her down and taught her these lessons directly. Instead, she learned by observing. She learned to pay attention. She learned to listen. She learned that before someone can perform, they must first understand. The atmosphere in the house was loving, but there were expectations too. Her parents did not force her into acting, but the environment naturally shaped her. Creative expression was part of daily life. Dinner conversations often involved discussions about plays, filming experiences, or artistic ideas. This did not feel unusual to her at the time, it was simply normal. Yet it was shaping her mind, teaching her to think deeply and to understand emotions in others. These were skills that would later make her acting so natural and believable. There was also a sense of responsibility. Because her father was well known, people outside the home recognized the Mills family name. Hayley grew up aware that how she behaved mattered, not just for herself, but also for her family's reputation. This gently encouraged her to be thoughtful and respectful. The support from her parents gave her confidence, but the public attention reminded her to stay grounded. As she grew, her connection to acting did not come from wanting attention. It came from feeling comfortable in that world. Watching her parents, she learned that acting was about expressing human feelings. It was about telling a truth that could connect people. She never had to push herself into that understanding. It slowly settled into her just by being present. But no one expected that her first film role would rewrite her life forever. At just 12, she didn't act, she understood. When Hayley Mills was chosen for the film Tiger Bay in 1959, she was still very young and had not planned a serious acting career yet. The role came to her in a natural way. Her father, Sir John Mills, was already set to appear in the film, and the director, J. Lee Thompson, was looking for a young girl who could play a character with strong feelings and quiet strength. Many young actresses were considered, but none of them seemed to connect to the role in the way the director imagined. Someone suggested that he should meet Hayley. At first, Hayley was shy and unsure, but when she read the scenes, something clicked. She did not push or try hard. She simply responded honestly to the moment. That truthfulness is what won her the role. Filming Tiger Bay was an emotional experience for her. The story centered on a young girl involved in a serious situation, and it required real emotional depth. Hayley worked alongside her father, but he did not guide her or direct her on set. He believed she needed to find her own way. The director also allowed her to respond naturally instead of forcing a rehearsed performance. This freedom gave her space to express real feelings. Instead of trying to act, she listened, watched, and reacted. This made her character feel genuine and alive. People on set noticed how easily she connected to emotions. When the camera was on, she could show sadness, confusion, fear, and hope without making it look forced. She seemed to understand what the character felt, even though she was young. It was a kind of emotional intelligence that cannot be taught. She noticed small things, how someone's voice changed when they were upset, how silence could express more than words, how eyes could show what a person was thinking. These small observations made her performance powerful. When the film was released, critics and audiences were surprised. They expected a child actor who might look cute on screen, but instead, they saw a young actress with depth. People talked about how real her performance felt and how believable she was in every scene. The film received strong praise, and many reviewers mentioned Hayley as the standout. She was not just a child star, she was a genuine actress. Her ability to express emotion made her different from others her age. This early success changed her life. More people in the film industry began to notice her, and opportunities started to open. Her performance showed that she had something rare, the ability to make people feel connected to her characters. It was not just talent, it was an inner understanding of feelings and human behavior. Even at 12, she had the gift of empathy, and it showed. And across the ocean, one man took notice: Walt Disney. Walt didn't just see talent, he saw a symbol. When Walt Disney watched Tiger Bay, he was struck by Hayley's performance in a way that was uncommon for him. Disney had seen many child actors over the years, but what he noticed in Hayley was something deeper than skill. She had sincerity. She didn't seem to be performing for the camera. Her expressions, reactions, and emotional responses felt natural, honest, and pure. Disney believed that children in films should feel real, not polished. And in Hayley, he saw the exact quality he had always hoped to bring into Disney movies: truthful emotion that could touch all audiences, children, parents, and grandparents alike. He reached out quickly. A meeting was arranged with Hayley and her family. Even though Walt Disney was a major figure in the entertainment world, he approached the Mills family with warmth and respect. He didn't make promises of fame or fortune. Instead, he spoke about storytelling. He believed Hayley could help bring characters to life who would inspire hope and kindness. Her parents appreciated the sincerity behind his words. They had always valued meaningful work, not just flashy opportunities, and Disney offered exactly that. After thoughtful discussion, Hayley signed with Disney Studios, marking the beginning of a new chapter in her life. Moving into the world of Disney productions was a significant change. Hollywood was larger, louder, and more organized than the British film environment she had known. There were bigger sets, more crew members, and a faster pace. But Hayley adjusted not by trying to become someone new, but by staying the same. The Disney team admired her natural behavior and did not try to reshape her personality. Instead, they encouraged her to be herself. Her kindness and honesty fit right into Disney's vision of the kind of stories they wanted to tell. Working with Disney also meant being part of a company that paid attention to every detail. Scripts, costumes, music, camera angles, everything was carefully planned. Hayley learned how much teamwork goes into making a film successful. She saw how each person on set played an important role, not just the actors. This helped her understand the value of respect and gratitude for everyone involved in the filmmaking process. Even at a young age, she treated crew members with appreciation, which earned her respect in return. Despite the excitement of Hollywood, there were challenges too. She was still very young and now part of a large industry that expected professionalism. She had to balance schooling, rehearsals, and filming schedules. There were times she felt tired or unsure, but the people around her, including her family and supportive members of the studio, helped her stay grounded. And Hayley herself had a calmness and maturity that helped her move through pressure without losing her sense of self. One of the most important aspects of her early Disney experience was the trust Walt Disney placed in her. He believed she could carry stories that required emotional strength. He gave her roles that showed not just joy and innocence, but also courage and emotional resilience. This trust allowed her to grow not only as an actress, but also as a person. Each role she played taught her something about feelings, relationships, and the experiences of others. It was during this time that Hayley began to truly understand her own identity as an actor. Not as someone trying to impress or pretend, but as someone who reflected real emotions, honestly. She learned that acting, for her, was not about fame. It was about connecting to people through stories. This understanding would stay with her throughout her career. Her next film wouldn't just bring success, it would define her childhood. One role, one smile, a world changed. When Hayley Mills took on the role of Pollyanna in 1960, she was only 14, but the character fit her in a very natural way. Pollyanna was a cheerful young girl who tried to see something good in every situation, no matter how difficult. She was not simply happy for no reason. She understood sadness, loneliness, and disappointment, but she chose to look toward hope. Hayley played this character with honesty, not forced sweetness. Her expressions, her voice, and the gentle way she connected with others on screen made the character feel alive. Viewers believed her kindness because it felt real. The emotional tone of Pollyanna was warm and sincere. The story showed how one person with a positive spirit could change the lives of an entire town. Instead of playing the role as overly cheerful, Hayley showed that Pollyanna felt deeply. When the character experienced pain or confusion, Hayley showed those feelings clearly and quietly. This balance made her performance powerful. People could see both the strength and the vulnerability in her character. It made Pollyanna more than just a happy child. She became someone who taught others to look for hope, even when life felt heavy. Audiences across the world connected with that message. Children admired her innocence and joy, while adults were moved by the emotional lessons the story offered. Families watched the film together and felt uplifted. Many people said the film reminded them of the importance of kindness and patience. Hayley's gentle presence became a symbol of warmth during a time when many people were dealing with challenges in their own lives. She became someone people felt they could trust, even though they had never met her. Her performance in Pollyanna was recognized in a special way when she received the Academy Juvenile Award. This award was given only to young actors who made an exceptional impact, and it was not given often. The judges saw that her acting was not simply cute or charming, it carried emotional understanding and maturity. Being honored with this award placed her among a small group of young performers who had changed the film world at a very young age. It was a significant achievement and a moment that marked her place in film history. However, with this success also came a new image that people attached to her. The public began to see Hayley as the perfect, cheerful, innocent young girl. People expected her to be like Pollyanna in real life, always bright and positive. This brought both admiration and pressure. While Hayley was naturally kind and thoughtful, she was still a real person who had many emotions, including sadness and uncertainty. Yet, because of this role, many believed she was always happy, always gentle, and always calm. This public image became something she would carry with her for years. Even with this pressure, Hayley continued to work with dedication. She understood that the role of Pollyanna had opened doors for her and had introduced her to millions of people around the world. The love and support from audiences gave her encouragement. At the same time, it also made her aware that every new role she took would be compared to this one. She knew she would need to grow, learn, and show new sides of herself as she continued acting. But her greatest challenge as an actress hadn't come yet playing twins. To play two people, she had to understand being one. When Hayley Mills began working on The Parent Trap in 1961, she was still very young, but the role demanded a great deal from her. This film was different from anything she had done before because she was asked to play not one character, but two. She played twin sisters, Susan and Sharon, who were separated at birth and later meet at a summer camp. The story required her to show each girl's personality clearly so that audiences could understand who was who, even though they looked exactly the same. It was a challenge not just in acting, but also in technical film work. To film scenes where both twins appeared together, the crew used new methods for that time. They used split-screen effects, stand-ins, and careful camera positioning. This meant Hayley often had to perform a scene twice, once as one sister and then again as the other. While filming, she would speak to an empty space or to a stand-in who did not speak back with the same emotion she needed. She had to imagine the other sister's presence and respond to it as if it were real. This required patience and strong focus. Many child actors would have struggled with this, but Hayley took it calmly. She tried to understand each sister's personality clearly before performing, so she could switch between them without confusion. Susan was more bold and confident, while Sharon was softer and more careful. Hayley learned to show these differences through posture, facial expressions, and tone of voice. The director praised her ability to shift from one character to the other smoothly. Those around her noticed that she was not just performing lines, she was thinking about how each girl felt. This careful emotional understanding made the film strong and enjoyable to watch. Audiences could tell that even though the faces were the same, the characters were not. It was during this film that Hayley began working closely with Maureen O'Hara, who played the twins' mother. Maureen was already an established actress known for her strong presence and confidence. She carried herself with dignity and seriousness, but also with warmth. To young Hayley, She seemed impressive. Her voice, her posture, and her expressions showed that she understood her work deeply. At first, Hayley felt a sense of admiration mixed with hesitation. She respected Maureen and did not want to disappoint her. The early days on set were important. Hayley was learning how to manage a complex role, and having Maureen there gave her an example to follow. Maureen never raised her voice or acted impatient. Instead, she worked steadily and carefully. She showed that acting was both art and discipline. Hayley watched how Maureen prepared for scenes, how she spoke to directors, and how she kept her focus when the cameras were rolling. These were lessons that did not need explanation. Hayley learned simply by observing. There were small moments between them that stayed in Hayley's memory. During breaks, Maureen would sometimes share simple stories about past films or life in Ireland. She did not talk about fame, but about real-life experiences. She encouraged Hayley not to worry about being perfect, but to be truthful. She once told her that the audience connects most with honesty, not performance. Hayley listened closely because she felt that Maureen understood something she herself was still learning: how to stay yourself while being someone else on screen. Even though there was admiration, there was also a feeling of being slightly intimidated. Maureen's confidence was so strong that it could feel overwhelming to someone so young. She had a presence that took up space, not in a loud way, but in a natural way. She seemed to know exactly who she was. Hayley, still growing and forming her identity, felt this difference. But instead of making her uncomfortable, it pushed her to learn more about herself. By the time filming progressed, Hayley began to relax around Maureen. They shared quiet jokes, smiles, and moments where Maureen encouraged her with small, supportive gestures. Hayley found comfort in knowing that someone as strong as Maureen believed in her. It helped her handle the pressure of playing two characters and being at the center of a cooling pictured major film. Working with Maureen also helped Hayley see that strength and kindness can exist at the same time. Maureen was firm when she needed to be, but always fair and respectful. The Parent Trap became one of the most beloved family films of the era, and Hayley's performance was widely praised. Audiences loved the lively contrast between the two sisters and felt the emotional warmth of the story. But behind the film's success was a deeper experience, one that left a lasting mark on Hayley's life. She was not only growing as an actress, but also growing as a person, influenced by the example of someone she respected. And this is where Maureen's presence becomes something more than just a co-star's. She didn't need to speak to fill a room, she simply was. When Hayley first saw Maureen O'Hara on the set of The Parent Trap, she was struck almost immediately. Maureen walked onto the set with calm steps, but her presence felt strong and clear. She had a posture that showed confidence, and her face showed a kind of seriousness that came from experience. Her bright red hair and her steady expression made her stand out even before she spoke a word. For a moment, Hayley simply watched her, trying to understand what made her presence feel so powerful. Maureen had been in many films before this one, and she knew the film world well. She had worked with major directors and famous actors, and she had played strong characters for years. She was respected for her talent and her control over her performances. But beyond her work, she carried herself in a way that signaled discipline. Every movement she made was sure, and every word she spoke had thought behind it. She did not waste effort on things that did not matter. She focused on the work at hand and expected others to do the same. To someone as young as Hayley, who was still learning who she was, this felt overwhelming. It was not that Maureen was unkind, she simply knew herself, and that made her presence feel larger than life. Hayley admired her immediately. She felt that Maureen had something she did not yet have: a sense of certainty. Hayley was still growing, still forming her identity, still discovering her own voice. Being around someone who appeared so sure of herself could feel both inspiring and intimidating at the same time. There were moments in the early days when Hayley felt small next to Maureen. When Maureen entered a room, everyone paid attention. She did not demand it, but it happened naturally. People respected her without question. Hayley watched how others responded to her, how they listened when she spoke, and how they stepped aside to let her think during difficult scenes. This showed Hayley that Maureen had earned her place through her work and professionalism. She did not need to prove anything anymore. Her reputation and her skills spoke for her. Maureen's elegance was not only in her appearance, but also in how she handled emotions. She did not show her feelings openly or with large gestures. Instead, her expressions were controlled and thoughtful. If she disagreed with something, she did not react loudly. She would simply pause, consider, and then answer clearly. When she laughed, it was warm and real, not forced. She understood when to speak and when to stay silent. This emotional balance made her seem strong, like someone who could face difficult moments without losing herself. For young Hayley, who was still understanding her own emotions, this was a lesson she absorbed slowly. She realized that strength did not always mean being firm on the outside. Sometimes strength was quiet, steady, and rooted inside. Maureen showed her that a person could be gentle and powerful at the same time. This understanding would guide Hayley in many parts of her life later on. But in the beginning, the difference between them felt wide. Hayley respected Maureen deeply, but she also felt nervous around her. She did not want to disappoint her or appear unprepared. She put great effort into her performance because she wanted to show Maureen that she took the work seriously, just as Maureen did. This feeling did not come from pressure placed on her by others, but from her own wish to earn respect. As the days passed, Hayley began to notice small things that helped her feel more comfortable. Maureen sometimes gave her a quiet smile when a scene went well. She would nod when Hayley handled a difficult moment successfully. These were small gestures, but they meant a great deal. They showed that Maureen was watching, not to judge, but to support. Hayley realized that beneath the strong presence, there was kindness, and this deeper understanding would soon become clearer. Because the truth is, Maureen wasn't just strong, she was protective. What is whispered between takes shapes a life more than the scenes themselves. During the filming of The Parent Trap, Hayley and Maureen did not just work together on camera. They shared many quiet moments when the cameras were off. These were not long, formal lessons. They were simple, everyday conversations that slowly began to guide Hayley in ways she did not fully understand at the time. Sometimes they spoke while waiting for the crew to set up a shot. Sometimes they talked during breaks, sitting just out of the lights. These moments, small and quiet, became some of the most meaningful in Hayley's early life. Maureen did not lecture or try to shape Hayley directly. Instead, she listened to her. She asked gentle questions and let Hayley speak about her feelings, her fears, and the sudden attention she was receiving. Being famous at a young age was confusing. People admired Hayley, but they also had expectations of how she should behave, how she should speak, and what kind of person she should be. Maureen understood this pressure because she had lived through it herself. She knew how easily a young person could lose their sense of self if they tried too hard to meet everyone else's expectations. One day, during a quiet break between scenes, Maureen shared something that Hayley never forgot. She said, "Know who you are before the world tells you who to be." At the time, Hayley nodded, but she did not completely understand. She was still just a teenager. She was still learning how to think and how to understand herself. But the sentence stayed in her mind. It was something she would return to again and again over the years. Maureen explained, in her calm way, that the film industry was full of strong voices. Some voices encouraged, some pressured, and some tried to shape you into something you were not. She told Hayley that many young actors lose themselves because they spend too much time trying to please others. She encouraged her to listen to her own feelings, to trust her own understanding of who she wanted to be, and to not let the public decide her identity for her. These conversations affected Hayley deeply. She began to notice how she behaved on and off set. She started to ask herself simple questions. What do I feel? What do I believe? What do I want? Not what others want from me. These were new questions for her, but they helped her begin to understand herself in a clearer way. She realized that she was not just an actress playing roles. She was a person with her own thoughts, hopes, and direction. Maureen also taught by example. She showed Hayley how to stay calm under pressure. If a scene was difficult, or if something went wrong, Maureen did not react with frustration. She paused, breathed, and continued. She never let stress change her behavior. This steady, stable presence made Hayley feel safe on set. It showed her that confidence did not have to be loud. It could be quiet and strong at the same time. Their bond developed slowly, without force. Hayley grew comfortable being around Maureen. She admired her, but she no longer felt intimidated. Instead, she felt supported. Maureen's encouragement helped her build confidence in her own judgment. She stopped worrying so much about whether she was doing everything perfectly. She began to trust that she could handle difficult situations as long as she stayed true to herself. Looking back years later, Hayley could clearly see how much those conversations had influenced her life. They shaped how she approached relationships, work, and even how she understood herself as she moved from childhood into adulthood. Maureen's presence on that film was more than just professional. It was emotional guidance at a time when Hayley needed it most. But life does not stay simple. Even with the lessons she learned, even with the confidence she began to grow, Hayley's journey was only beginning. The film world would continue to watch her, judge her, and shape opinions about who she was. The advice Maureen gave would serve as her anchor, but anchors are only needed during storms. And, as Hayley grew older, the beasts of seven by, the world would try to reshape her anyway. Fame gives, but it also takes. After the success of her early films, Hayley Mills moved into her teenage years with the whole world watching. She had become known as the cheerful, hopeful, and innocent girl from Disney movies, and many people expected her to stay that way forever. But Hayley was growing, learning, and changing like any young person. She was no longer a child, and she felt the need to explore different kinds of roles that showed deeper and more adult emotions. This was a natural step for any actor. But for someone who had become a symbol of childhood innocence, it was more difficult than most people realized. When she took on the role in The Family Way in 1966, it marked the beginning of her transition into adult acting. The film dealt with themes that were more serious and personal than her previous work. It showed a young married couple facing emotional and relationship challenges. This was far from the cheerful world of Pollyanna or The Parent Trap. Hayley approached the role with sincerity and care, wanting to show her ability to act in mature stories. But the public reaction was mixed. Many people were not ready to see her this way. Some felt uncomfortable because they still saw her as the little girl from Disney films. They had trouble accepting that she had grown up. This was the beginning of a struggle that many child actors face. The audience had formed a clear image of who she was supposed to be. To them, she was forever young, gentle, and innocent. But Hayley knew that she was more than the roles she had played. She wanted to explore new parts of herself. She wanted to express feelings and experiences that belonged to adulthood. The problem was that the world did not always allow young actors to change at their own pace. Inside, Hayley felt a tension between her real self and the image the public held. She had to ask herself what she truly wanted. Did she want to continue playing the same type of character repeatedly, just because people liked it? Or did she want to grow, even if some people didn't understand? These questions were difficult, especially because she had grown up in front of others and had often tried to meet their expectations. She remembered Maureen O'Hara's words, "Know who you are before the world tells you who to be." Now those words became even more important. The transition to adulthood was not just about acting roles. It was also emotional. Hayley was learning about relationships, independence, and her own identity. She was no longer protected by the simplicity of childhood. The world was more complicated, and she needed to find her place in it. At times, she felt uncertain and lost. At other times, she felt strong and confident. Growth rarely happens in a straight line. It moves in steps, sometimes forward, sometimes back. The media did not always make this easier. Reporters and magazines often compared her new work to her earlier films, sometimes in a way that felt unfair. They judged her not only for her acting choices, but also for her personal life. This kind of attention could be overwhelming, but Hayley remained steady. She reminded herself that the people who truly cared about her would understand. Still, even with strong guidance, the world's opinions can carry weight. People around her had ideas about how she should behave and what choices she should make. She could feel the pressure to fit into what others wanted. But inside, she knew that she could not stay in the same place forever. She needed to live her own life, not the version others imagined for her. This struggle between who she was expected to be and who she wanted to become opened the door to the next chapter in her life. It was during this period of searching and growth that she met someone who would change her life in ways the public was not prepared to accept. This struggle led her to a love the world was not ready to understand. Sometimes the world doesn't see what two people feel. When Hayley met Roy Boulting, she was a young woman in her early 20s, and he was a well-known director in his 50s. Their age difference was large, and many people focused on that instead of trying to understand their connection. The public reacted strongly when their relationship became known. Some people spoke with harsh judgment, saying Hayley was too young. Others believed Roy was taking advantage of her. But inside the relationship, the feelings were different from what the outside world imagined. Hayley did not feel controlled or pushed. She felt seen, understood, and respected. Their relationship began while working on The Family Way. Roy treated her not as a child star or a symbol of innocence, but as an adult woman. For Hayley, who had spent years trying to grow beyond her childhood image, this meant a great deal. Roy spoke to her seriously, listened to her thoughts, and valued her opinions. He encouraged her artistic confidence and helped her step out of the shadow of her early fame. This emotional support made their bond feel real and meaningful to her. The public continued to talk, but Hayley learned to block out the noise. She focused on how she felt inside the relationship rather than what others said. She and Roy made a life together, away from the spotlight, in a countryside home known as the Cobstone Windmill. The windmill stood on a hill surrounded by quiet land, far from the pressure of Hollywood and London. Life there was simple and peaceful. They cooked meals together, walked in the fields, and welcomed close friends rather than large crowds. The windmill became their safe space, a place where they could be themselves without judgment. During this time, Hayley changed in many ways. She was no longer the child that the world remembered. She became more thoughtful, independent, and sure of her own feelings. The relationship required her to grow, to consider things carefully, and to understand her emotions honestly. She learned how to make decisions for herself, even when others disagreed. This growth did not come quickly or easily, but it was real. When their son, Crispian, was born, another shift happened. Hayley stepped into motherhood with love and care. Being a mother gave her a new sense of purpose, a grounding presence in her life. Crispian was bright, curious, and full of creative energy from the start. As he grew, he showed interest in music and expression, something he later carried into his adult life. Hayley felt a deep connection to him, and she was proud to see him develop his own identity. The windmill became not just a home for her and Roy, but a home for their child, full of memories of laughter, learning, and shared days. Even with all this joy, the relationship was not without challenges. The age difference, life experiences, and differing expectations slowly began to show. As Hayley continued to grow and change, she started to see herself and her future differently. She had entered the relationship as someone still learning who she was. Now, she began to find her own voice more clearly. Roy, who was much older and more settled in his views, did not always move at the same emotional pace. They cared for each other deeply, but they were not always in the same place within themselves. There were no dramatic or cruel moments. The relationship did not end in anger. It simply reached a point where they realized they were moving in different directions. The time they shared was important and meaningful, but life had begun to pull them apart. Hayley left the relationship with love still in her heart, but also with a clearer sense of who she was and who she was becoming. But even love that changes us doesn't always stay. Loss does not end a person, it reshapes them. When Hayley's relationship with Roy Bolting came to a close, it was not with bitterness, but with quiet sadness and understanding. They had shared years that were meaningful and important, but life had shifted. Hayley was still growing, still learning who she was and what she needed. Roy was older and more settled in his ways. Their paths no longer moved forward in the same direction. The separation marked the end of a chapter that had shaped Hayley deeply, both as a woman and as a mother. After the separation, Hayley focused on raising her son, Crispian. Being a mother became one of the most grounding parts of her life. She wanted to give him stability, warmth, and a sense of belonging. At the same time, she continued to work, taking roles in television, film, and theater. But underneath her professional life, she was still searching for something personal, a solid sense of identity, not built on childhood fame or other people's expectations. This search was not a straight path. Some days she felt sure of herself, and other days she felt uncertain, just like anyone else learning to understand their life after change. In time, Hayley entered a new relationship with actor Lee Lawson. Their connection was different from what she had experienced before. It was less about filling emotional space and more about companionship and shared experience. They understood each other as actors and as individuals, trying to find balance in a world that moved quickly and demanded much. In 1976, they welcomed a son named Jason. Becoming a mother again brought familiar love and new challenges. She now had 2 children to raise, 2 young lives depending on her care, while she continued to explore her work and identity. Hayley and Lee stayed together for several years, but eventually, they too parted ways. The breakup was not loud or dramatic. It was the quiet kind that comes when 2 lives simply grow in different directions. Hayley did not speak negatively about the relationship. Instead, she focused on the grateful parts, the love they shared, the child they raised, and the lessons learned. She moved forward with respect, both for herself and for the past. As the years went on, Hayley continued acting, but her relationship with her career became more balanced. She no longer felt that her identity depended on her work. She had learned, slowly, and sometimes painfully, that a person is more than their public image. She spent time with her children, took roles that felt meaningful, and allowed herself space to grow quietly. Then, in 1997, while touring with a stage production of The King and I, Hayley met actor and writer Firdous Bamji. He was 20 years younger than her, but their connection did not depend on age. It came from shared creativity, shared respect, and a gentle understanding of one another. Their relationship did not need to impress anyone. It was not about image or expectation. It was about companionship, 2 people choosing to share life's quiet moments as well as its challenges. This relationship felt steady in a way that some earlier relationships had not. There was no need to explain or justify it to the world. Hayley had learned enough by this time to know that real understanding happens between 2 people, not in the opinions of others. Firdous supported her independence and her work, and Hayley supported his. They allowed each other the space to be individuals while being partners. This balance brought peace. In these later years, Hayley's life became less about public performance and more about personal truth. She discovered that identity is not fixed in one moment. It grows, shifts, and deepens with time. She allowed herself to live with softness, patience, and self-respect. She had learned to be herself, not the image the world once created for her, not the child star, not just the actress, but a whole person. And through it all, one voice kept echoing. Sometimes, the greatest gift is a sentence spoken once, but remembered forever. As Hayley grew older and moved through different stages of her life, she found herself returning again and again to the memories of her time with Maureen O'Hara. Those early days on the set of The Parent Trap had been full of learning, even though she didn't fully understand it at the time. She had been a young girl trying to understand herself, her place in the world, and the meaning of her work. Maureen had been the steady presence who showed her, through quiet example, how to carry herself with strength and dignity. When Hayley looked back, she realized that Maureen had been more than just a co-star. She had been a guide. Not a guide who gives direct instructions, but one who shows the way by simply being who she is. Maureen never sat down and told Hayley how to live or what choices to make. Instead, she offered small moments of honesty and warmth, small moments that ended up shaping Hayley's understanding of herself. The sentence that stayed with her the longest was, "Know who you are before the world tells you who to be." At the time, Hayley did not realize how important those words would become. But as she faced the pressures of fame, public expectations, changing roles, love, heartbreak, motherhood, and rediscovering herself, she often remembered those words. They helped her stay grounded when she felt lost. They helped her remember that her value did not come from roles, applause, or headlines. It came from inside. There was a moment later in life she could not pinpoint the exact year, but she remembered the feeling when she understood the depth of Maureen's influence. She was watching The Parent Trap again, many years after filming it. As she saw her younger self on the screen, she noticed not just the acting, but the way she carried herself. She saw the quiet confidence she didn't know she had at the time. She saw the way she looked at Maureen in certain scenes, not just as a character looking at a mother, but as a young woman looking at someone she admired. She saw the beginnings of who she would eventually become. Hayley realized then that Maureen had given her more than advice. She had given her an example of how to live with self-respect. Maureen had shown her that strength did not have to be loud, and kindness did not have to be soft. A person could be both firm and loving. A person could be gentle without being fragile. A person could hold space for others while still holding firm to their own identity. In later years, when Hayley heard of Maureen's passing in 2015, she felt a deep sadness. It was not only the loss of a former co-star, it was the loss of someone who had quietly helped shape her life. She wished she had told Maureen directly how much those small moments had meant. But even though the words were never spoken aloud, the connection remained. Some gratitude lives in the heart, not in conversation. Hayley often thought about the way Maureen laughed, the warmth in her smile, and the calm in her presence. She remembered how Maureen would place a gentle hand on her shoulder before a difficult scene and simply say, "You can do this." It was not dramatic or emotional, but it was genuine. That kind of quiet reassurance is something a person does not forget. Looking back, Hayley felt thankful for the lesson of self-identity, thankful for the emotional support, and thankful for the example of how to walk through life with dignity. She did not need constant memories to feel Maureen's presence. The lessons lived inside her actions, her choices, her tone, and the strength she carried into adulthood. The influence did not fade with time. It became part of her, a steady foundation. But the story does not end with memory. It ends with meaning. Some lessons we inherit, others we choose. Looking back over the many chapters of Hayley Mills's life, one clear thread continues through all of them: the search to understand herself and to live in a way that stayed true to her heart. Her childhood brought fame, admiration, and opportunities many could only dream of. But it also brought expectations and pressures that were difficult for someone so young to understand. Through it all, she learned that identity is not something others give us. It is something we must discover and protect for ourselves. Hayley learned strength, not in the loud, forceful sense, but in the quiet way of standing firm inside. She learned compassion, not only for others, but also for herself. She learned that a person can change and grow many times in a lifetime and still remain whole. She learned that fame can bring love from the world, but it cannot replace the love we must hold within ourselves. These lessons were not taught in a classroom or through speeches. They were shaped in small moments, in conversations, in mistakes, in heartbreak, in motherhood, and in the gentle guidance of someone who believed in her. What Maureen O'Hara gave her was not just advice, but a model of how to live with dignity. She showed her that strength can be calm, that confidence can be quiet, and that the most important battles are not the ones fought in public, but the ones we face inside our own hearts. Hayley carried this with her long after the cameras stopped rolling, long after childhood roles were left behind, and long after life changed in ways no one could have predicted. Today, Hayley carries that fire forward in how she speaks, how she works, and how she loves. She does not try to be who the world once expected her to be. She simply lives honestly, with the wisdom that comes from experience and reflection. She understands now that every stage of her life had meaning, even the difficult ones. Growth is not always comfortable, but it is always valuable. For those who hear her story, there is something to take with them too. We all face moments when the world tries to tell us who to be. We all face times when expectations feel heavy, and the path forward seems uncertain. But like Hayley learned, the most important voice to listen to is the one inside ourselves. Identity does not come from applause or approval. It comes from knowing our own heart, our own values, and our own truth. In the end, Hayley's story is not just about films or fame. It is about becoming. It is about learning to stand with quiet strength. It is about carrying forward kindness, dignity, and self-respect. It is about remembering the voices that guided us and choosing which ones we allow to stay. Some lessons stay with us for a lifetime. Some lessons become our life.